The sky over the capital city of Zarian was dark with smoke. Cracks of thunder and distant booms echoed through the palace halls. Though they were not from storms, they were the last sounds of a dying war. King Ralvan stood at the highest window of his palace. His golden crown hung heavy on his head, not because of its weight, but because of sorrow. His daughter, Princess Elsera, had left for the war 6 cycles ago and had not returned. Reports said she was missing in the southern front, near the human border. Every day since, he waited. Every night, he prayed to the stars for her return. But hope had long faded. Zarian's council had begged him to name a new heir. The people feared rebellion, collapse, and the rise of lesser clans. But the king refused. His heart could not let go. He turned from the window and walked slowly through the long hall. The palace was quiet now. No more court music, no more cheers, just whispers like ghosts. Soldiers stood guard in silence, their armor still scratched from battles long past. And then, the horns blew. The deep, loud sound rolled through the palace like thunder. It was the signal someone was approaching the gate, not just anyone. Royal blood. The king's heart stopped. He moved fast for a man his age, robes swaying behind him as he marched to the front steps. Guards opened the heavy golden doors, and there she stood, Princess Elsera. Her blue and gold armor was scorched and dented. Her hair was tied back, a long scar across her cheek. But her eyes were the same, bright, strong, alive. She had returned. But she was not alone. Behind her stood a tall human male, dressed in battle-worn gear, with strange markings on his shoulder. His eyes were sharp, his hand resting calmly on the hilt of his blade. He looked around the palace with careful interest but did not bow. He stood with pride. The crowd that gathered gasped. Some whispered in shock. A human? Here? Beside the princess? Elsera took one step forward and bowed low. "Father," she said softly, "I have returned." King Ralvan could not speak at first. His lips trembled, and his eyes filled with tears he had locked away for years. He came down the steps, slow at first, then faster, until he reached her. He touched her face, as if checking to see if she was real. "Elsera," he whispered. "My daughter. My light." She smiled faintly, eyes tired. "I survived." "Thanks." To him, she turned and nodded to the human, who stepped forward. His movements were calm, respectful, but never weak. He spoke in perfect Zarian. "My name is Darren. I fought beside your daughter. I followed her through fire and storm. I owe her my life, and I believe she would say the same." The king's eyes narrowed. "You are human." "Yes," Darren answered, "but not your enemy." The guards reached for their weapons. Council members shouted. One of them, a silver-robed elder, spoke loudly. "This is madness, bringing a human into the heart of the Empire. After all they've done?" Elsera raised her voice. "Enough, this man saved me when my own guards left me for dead. He carried me through the burning fields of Selter. He gave me water when I was dying. And when enemy ships surrounded us, he stayed and fought." The hall went silent. The king looked from his daughter to the man. He saw no fear in Darren's face, no lies in his eyes. Just quiet strength. He stepped back. "Why have you come here, human?" Darren answered without pause. "To return your daughter safely, and to stand before you in peace." The king said nothing for a long time. Then he turned. "Come, you both must rest. You have crossed a long road." As the doors closed behind them, the palace filled with whispers. Some of fear, some of wonder. But deep in the king's heart, something else had begun to stir. Hope. The palace walls whispered louder now. Word had spread fast. The lost princess had returned, and with a human at her side. Inside the golden chamber, Princess Elsera sat beside her father at the long stone table. Servants brought food, but neither touched it. The king's fingers tapped slowly against the table. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, always glancing toward the human. Darren stood quietly near the wall, arms crossed. He didn't flinch under the royal gaze. His breathing was slow, controlled, but he could feel the weight of many eyes on him. "Why didn't you return alone?" the king finally asked. Elsera looked up. "Because I promised him protection. He bled for me. He fought for me. I would not leave him behind in enemy lands." The king leaned forward. "And why did you trust a human?" Elsera paused, then spoke softly. "Because he did what no Zarian did. He stayed when it was hopeless. He never ran. He never gave up on me." A deep voice interrupted. It was General Threx, the war hero of Zarian, entering with hard steps and sharp eyes. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "I have reviewed the reports. The human matches the description of a known enemy commander. He was feared on the southern border. Many of our warriors died by his hand." Elsera stood. "That was before he switched sides after his unit turned on him. He saved me." General Threx narrowed his eyes at Darren. "Or maybe he used you to get inside our walls." The king raised his hand. "Enough." He looked at Darren. "Is this true? Were you once a commander?" Darren didn't lie. "Yes, I was trained to fight Zarians. But my unit betrayed a surrender order. They killed civilians. I tried to stop them. I failed. I fled and met your daughter not long after." Threx growled. "Words are wind. We need proof." The king stood. "Then he will face the right of honor." The room fell silent. The right of honor was an old test. A trial by truth, strength, and pain. Only those pure of heart could pass it. Elsera's face turned pale. "Father, no. He's not one of us. The right could kill him." The king nodded. "And if he lies, he deserves no less." Darren stepped forward. "I accept." Gasps echoed through the room. Even Threx looked surprised. Elsera grabbed Darren's arm. "You don't have to do this." "I know," Darren said gently. "But I will, for you." Later that night, torches lit the sacred arena beneath the palace. It was made of black stone, cold and unforgiving. A ring of elders and nobles stood around it. The air was heavy with silence. Darren was led in, wearing only light armor. Across from him stood a masked warrior chosen by the council, strong, brutal, and silent. A voice called out, "You may fight, but not to kill. You must survive 3 rounds. If you fall, you fail. If you lie, the stone will burn you. If your spirit is false, your body will break." Darren nodded once. The bell rang. The masked warrior charged. He struck with speed, like a Zarian beast, but Darren dodged, rolled, and countered. Pain burned through his ribs, but he didn't stop. He remembered the mud, the fire, and Elsera's wounded body in his arms. He had survived worse. The crowd watched in awe. Round, Darren stood his ground. In the final clash, both fighters collapsed to their knees, but Darren rose again. The fire rings glowed blue. The stone did not burn him. Right was past. The king rose from his seat. His voice echoed across the chamber. "The human is true." Elsera ran to Darren and held him tight. He was bleeding but smiling. The nobles did not cheer, but they bowed their heads. Even General Threx gave a nod. That night, the palace was quiet again, but the whispers had changed. They no longer spoke of fear. They spoke of something far more dangerous to old traditions' respect. The palace halls were silent, but the air was not peaceful. Behind heavy golden doors, the royal council gathered again, this time without the king or his daughter. The room was cold, and the mood was colder. General Threx stood at the center, arms behind his back, eyes scanning the elders. "We cannot allow this," he said firmly. "The people will not follow a human. If the king continues down this path, The empire will fall from within. A younger noble, dressed in blue robes, leaned forward. But he passed the rite of honor. The stone glowed blue. The stone can be tricked, another muttered. No, said Aldebaran, the oldest among them. The rite is sacred. If the human survived it, then he carries truth in his soul. Threx's voice hardened. Truth or not, he is still human. We have lost too much in this war. Letting him stand beside the princess sends the wrong message. It makes us look weak. Or merciful, Aldebaran said. Mercy is not strength. Threx slammed his fist on the table. Elsera is brave, yes, but blinded. She sees him through her heart, not her eyes. Silence fell for a moment. Then a cold voice whispered from the shadows. Then perhaps ... please separate them. Eyes turned toward Lord Ekarin, a silent advisor with power in hidden corners. We don't need to kill him. Just remove him, quietly. A ship can fail. A guard can slip. Accidents happen, even in royal places. Threx didn't smile. But he did not disagree. Meanwhile, in her private chamber, Elsera sat beside Darren. He was resting, bandages wrapped across his chest. Her hand held his. You were insane to accept the right, she whispered, and yet. Here I am, he said with a soft grin. Elsera smiled, but her eyes were worried. They won't accept you, Darren. Not truly. Not all of them. I know. They may try to push you out. Maybe worse. I know that too. Elsera looked down. I don't want to lose you, not after everything. Darren gently squeezed her hand. Then let them try. Suddenly, a knock on the door. It was a young servant. Girl, nervous. Your Highness, the king wishes to see the human, alone. Elsera stood. Why alone? He said it was personal. Darren slowly stood up, grimacing from the pain. It's all right. I'll go. In the royal garden, under glowing crystal lanterns, the king waited. Darren approached with quiet steps. You are not one of us, the king said, not turning. But you stood in our arena. You faced our trial. You carry no fear in your heart. I've seen worse than fear, your majesty. The king finally looked at him. You love her. It wasn't a question. Darren answered without hesitation. Yes, the king nodded once. I loved her mother the same way. She was not noble. The court hated our union. But she had fire in her soul. Elsera has that same fire. And now, so do you. Darren stood tall, even through his pain. I won't back down. The king's eyes narrowed. Then be ready. The court is not finished with you. Later that night, a shadow moved. In the hallways near Darren's room, a cloaked figure slipped through the corridors, blade hidden beneath robes, but the room was empty. The window was wide open, and far above, on the palace roof, Darren stood with a blade of his own waiting. He had been a commander once, and he hadn't forgotten how to smell danger. Asterisk. The assassin's blade never reached its target. Darren moved like a shadow. He had waited in silence, hidden above the window, because his soldier's instincts had not faded. When the figure entered the room and drew a dagger, Darren dropped behind him and struck fast. The assassin fell with a thud, alive, but unconscious. Guards rushed in seconds later, alerted by the noise. They froze when they saw the cloaked attacker. On the floor, tied with Darren's belt, Darren pointed. I didn't kill him. I want the truth first. When the assassin's hood was pulled down, the guards recognized him. He was not from the outside. He was palace staff loyal to one of the council lords. The news spread quickly. By sunrise, Elsera was storming through the golden halls. Her armor clicked with every step, her voice sharp with rage. She reached the high council room and pushed the heavy doors open with both hands. Elders turned in shock. They had not expected her. You tried to kill him, she shouted. In my father's home. In my home. General Threx stood. We did no such thing. That explained the dagger found in his room. Explain the court servant under your command. The room fell quiet. Elsira's voice dropped low. You want him gone because he is human. But he passed the right. You praised that same trial when it favored your allies. Now you ignore it when it doesn't. Lord Ekerin leaned forward calmly. Princess, the court fears for your future. A bond with a human is my choice, she snapped. You fear him because he is strong. You fear that a human earned our respect without noble blood. But that is not weakness. That is honor. The council stayed silent, but eyes shifted. Some looked away. Others began to doubt. The king entered moments later. He had heard everything. He looked at the room of old men who had served him for decades, and then at his daughter standing tall, fierce, and proud. And finally, at Darren, who stepped in behind quietly, holding his bruised ribs but standing like a soldier. The king spoke with calm strength. There will be no more secrets in this palace. He pointed to the assassin, now guarded by soldiers. He confessed under the truth stone. Lord Ekerin gave the order. Gasps rang out. The guards seized Ekerin immediately. He did not resist. He simply smiled. Then the court has truly fallen. No, said the king. The court is changing. And you cannot stop it. That night, Darren and Elsira stood on the palace balcony. The stars above were bright, the sky finally clear. I thought I lost you, she whispered. You won't. Darren said softly. Not while I breathe. Below them, nobles gathered in the grand hall, not to argue but to listen. For the first time in generations, a human was to speak before the court, not as a prisoner or guest, but as a partner. King had called it a new beginning. Not everyone agreed, but none dared stop it. The galaxy had changed. And so had Zarian, *. The royal court was full. Nobles filled every seat. Warriors stood along the walls, arms crossed. Even the outer cities had sent messengers to witness what was about to happen. A human was about to speak. At the center of the great hall, under the golden dome, Darren stood alone. He wore simple armor, cleaned and polished, but he didn't carry a weapon. He didn't need to. His voice would be his shield. Elsira stood in the shadows watching. Her eyes never left him. King Ralvan sat on the throne above, quiet and still. His expression unreadable. He had given no promises. Only one chance. Darren took a slow breath. I was trained to kill your people, he began. I studied your weaknesses, your cities, your fighting styles. My people told me you were monsters. The court murmured. But then, I met one of you, and she bled saving me. She shared her water when I was dying. She burned her hands pulling me from fire. His voice stayed steady. I didn't see a monster. I saw someone braver than anyone I'd ever known. He looked up toward the nobles. You fear what I am. I understand that. But your daughter, the princess, did not fear me. She judged me by my actions, not my face, not my past. Some nobles turned their eyes away. Others leaned forward. I'm not asking for a title. I'm not asking for a throne. I came here to return her home. I stayed to protect her. And I will leave, if that's what she wants. Elsira stepped forward from the side. She doesn't. The hall turned silent. I want him here. Not just as a guard or guest, but as my equal. Before the crowd could speak, the doors of the court flew open. A tall figure entered clad in red and silver war armor. His face was marked by 3 scars, his voice like thunder. I challenge the human, he said. Gasps broke across the chamber. It was Lord Dernick, the high warlord of the eastern clans, known for his hatred of humans and his thirst for power. If he is to walk among us, let him prove it. Not in your court, but in the ring of fire. Elsira moved to protest, but Darren stepped forward calmly. What are the rules? Dernick grinned. 1 test, 1 blade. First to fall loses. If you win, I step down from the council. If you lose, you leave this palace forever. The king stood. "This challenge has no honor," Darren interrupted gently. "I accept." That night, the fire ring was lit. Two warriors stepped inside. One born of the Zarian bloodlines. One born of Earth. Dernek swung first fierce and heavy. His strength was real. Every strike was meant to end the fight quickly. Darren moved carefully, watching, dodging, blocking. He was wounded, but not weak. He remembered war. He remembered pain. And he remembered Elsera's eyes. In a final clash, Darren slid under Dernek's heavy swing and struck the warlord's wrist with the hilt of his blade, sending the weapon flying into the fire. Dernek fell to one knee. The fire ring glowed blue. The crowd was silent. Then one by one, the nobles stood. Not to attack, but to bow. The fire ring cooled. Lord Dernek, once the fiercest voice of division, remained kneeling. His hand clutched his wrist, but he made no move to rise or speak. He had lost, and he knew it. Darren stepped back and dropped his blade on the ground. He didn't lift his arms in victory. He didn't cheer. He only turned and looked at Elsera. She smiled soft, proud, and filled with something deeper than relief. The king descended the royal steps slowly, his heavy cloak trailing behind him. Every eye followed him. Every voice held back. He walked into the center of the ring and stood between both men. Then he turned to the nobles. "I once believed that strength came from blood," the king said. "That only those born of Zarian could lead our people. That trust could not cross the stars." He looked at his daughter, then at Darren. "But my daughter returned from war, not with an army. She returned with a man who gave everything to protect her. A man who bled not for his own land but for hers. He passed our trials. He faced our doubts. And still he stands." The king raised one hand. "From this day, the court will recognize Darren of Earth, not as a stranger, not as a guest, but as a son of Zarian by word, by heart, and by honor." Gasps broke across the chamber, and then came the bowing. One noble after another lowered their heads. Even General Threx grudgingly gave a stiff nod of respect. Darren turned to Elsera, his voice soft. "Did that really just happen?" She laughed, brushing a bit of ash off his shoulder. "It did. What now?" he asked. "Now," she said, taking his hand, "we rebuild. Together." That evening, lights filled the sky. Ships lit their engines in celebration. The capital rang with music once more. Not for war, but for unity. The king stood on his balcony alone, watching the joy below. His crown felt lighter somehow. Behind him, a servant entered quietly. "Your Majesty?" "Yes? Should I prepare the records of the new line?" The king smiled. "No," he said. "Let them write their own story." Far below, Elsera and Darren walked through the palace gardens, hand in hand. Stars sparkled above them. The galaxy was still full of danger, still full of enemies, but they had each other, and hope had returned to Zarian.